inquest, as have Spain and the Netherlands. And without a strong international response, Britain is less likely to offer its own help. The dilemma the West faces is that they fear getting sucked further into the Bosnian morass, but also know that the current ceasefire offers perhaps the last best hope of peace. They don't want it to fail because they didn't give General Rose the tools to finish the job. Mark Leahy, BBC News at the Ministry of Defence.
The Queen is to visit Russia later this year, probably in the autumn. It'll be the first time a British monarch has been there since at least the revolution in 1917, and follows a renewed invitation from President Yeltsin. News of the visit was given as the Prime Minister ended his own trip to Moscow.
The Prime Minister left diplomacy and worries about Bosnia behind him today and headed from Moscow for the showcase of Russia's reforms, Nizhny Novgorod. His first port of call was a truck repair shop, privatised with the help of British government aid. 200 workers have been made redundant here, but the enterprise is at least profitable now. Mr. Major approved.
Excellent.
It was here that he explained why the Queen has finally accepted a long-standing invitation to visit Russia.
The Russians have now had democratic elections. They've got a democratically elected president. It now seems an appropriate time to proceed with it. It may happen as early as this autumn, but final details are not yet arranged.
Sakharov picked up the receiver.
Mrs. Major saw for herself evidence of the democratic changes here when she visited the flat where the dissident Andrei Sakharov lived in exile in the last years of communist power. In the streets, the Prime Minister was mobbed by curious spectators, and he correctly divined the likely Russian response to the coming royal visit.
I think the Queen will be a very popular visitor indeed in Russia. Very popular, none more so.
She'd love it. We're enjoying it, why shouldn't she?
On his whirlwind tour of Nizhny Novgorod, the Prime Minister saw land being auctioned off and ate in a private restaurant. He saw nothing of the millions of Russians who've only suffered under the reforms, yet it's they who may enjoy the royal visit most. A state visit by the British Queen could do more to boost morale here than all the talk about privatisation. This, after all, is a country that destroyed its own monarchy 75 years ago and has little in the way of glamorous personalities. Angus Roxburgh, BBC News, Nizhny Novgorod.
Verdicts of unlawful killing have been recorded at the inquest into the deaths of 12-year-old Tim Parry and 3-year-old Jonathan Ball, who were killed in the IRA bomb attack in Warrington last March. The coroner said that whoever carried out the bombing must have been aware of the terrible havoc it would cause. Police and bailiffs have been involved in a major operation to evict hundreds of protesters from houses in East London, due to be demolished to make way for a link road to the M11 motorway. 8 of the demonstrators were eventually arrested, and the buildings have now been knocked down.
The police in East London have run into the organised resistance of the M11 protesters before, and 700 of them were on duty to support bailiffs and sheriff's officers. Their task was to gain possession of 6 Edwardian houses in the path of the road where demonstrators have made their last stand. They refused to hand over the houses, so the bailiffs had to climb in and take them. Looking rather sheepish about the whole thing, there were more surprises to come, as they had to pick their way through the 300 protesters inside the buildings. There were some lively encounters, but the protest was mainly peaceful, and one by one the demonstrators were taken out of the houses and away from the area. With the demolition going on around them, those most determined not to leave took to the roofs. Bolt cutters were needed to free one man who'd chained himself to a weather vane. He was eventually lifted clear, no match in the end for the combination of men and equipment brought in to allow the road building to continue. It took 11 hours before the last of the demonstrators were plucked out of a tree, vowing to harry the M11 project all the way. But on this site, there was nothing left to protest about. Neil Bennett, BBC News, East London.
The Church of England has appointed 2 bishops who will minister to the opponents of women priests and persuade them to stay in the church. Nicknamed the Flying Bishops, the Archdeacon of Exeter, John Richards, and the Archdeacon of Macclesfield, John Gaisford, will look after the interests of Anglican traditionalists throughout the country. But opponents of women priests say their appointment will not be enough to stop them leaving the church. The climber Jacqueline Greaves, who sold the story of her survival on a Scottish mountain, has said she will make a considerable donation to the rescue services. Mrs. Greaves, who left hospital today, had been criticised by several MPs after reports that she'd been offered £40,000 by 2 tabloid newspapers for her story. But Mrs. Greaves said the real amount will be about half that sum. President Clinton is trying to persuade the United States Congress to pass an anti-crime bill that would put an extra 100,000 police on America's streets. A new crime epidemic is sweeping through rural areas. Among the worst affected is Little Rock, the capital of Arkansas, where Mr. Clinton was governor for 12 years. It now has one of the highest murder rates in America.
At a fast food restaurant, a disgruntled employee shot 3 other workers and 3 schoolgirls. Just another lunchtime in America.
Stacy's been shot 3 times, and Christina got shot twice, and I couldn't believe it happened.
In Southern California, a security camera captured 2 youths trying to buy beer. When the shop owner asked their ages, they pulled out a pistol and a gunfight began. Unbelievably, no one was hurt here, but small-town America is reeling from violence. 63 Americans die from guns every day, a quarter of them teenagers. And where Bill Clinton was governor for 12 years, Little Rock, Arkansas, the per capita murder rate is now higher than in New York City.
Last month we had I believe a 2-year-old little girl was shot in the head as a result of a shootout between gang members.
And how old are the gunmen?
Anywhere from 12 up, normally.
12-year-olds with guns?
Yes, sir.
What do you think of that?
It's repulsive.
Little Rock police have expanded horse patrols and introduced bicycle patrols on the streets. Last month they began a nighttime curfew for teenagers. But gangs and drugs and guns and murder form the new epidemic. Sweet Pea is a 19-year-old gangster.
Joining a gang is like committing suicide. You know, you either gonna die or you're gonna go to the penitentiary, one of the two. I mean, it's very few people retire from it, you know.
Guns are so easy to obtain here in Little Rock that one gang member said he could get me a 9mm pistol for $80 and an AK-47 Kalashnikov assault rifle for $250. When the means of killing is so inexpensive, it's hardly surprising that life itself is cheap. Gavin Esler, BBC News, Little Rock, Arkansas.
Police in London are searching for a convicted murderer who escaped during a prison transfer. 32-year-old James Hurley, jailed for life for his part in the murder of an off-duty policeman in 1988, escaped from a coach in Wandsworth while being taken to the prison there. He slashed a prison officer's face with a knife, and police describe him as dangerous. Football, Brian Hamilton has been appointed Northern Ireland's manager to succeed Billy Bingham. Hamilton was capped 50 times by Northern Ireland during his playing career. More recently, he managed Tranmere, Leicester and Wigan. Tonight, in the first leg of the Coca-Cola Cup semi-final, Tranmere Rovers beat Aston Villa 3-1. England's cricketers have won the first one-day international against the West Indies in Bridgetown, Barbados. After winning the toss, England made 202 for 5. And then bowled the West Indies out for just 141.
From Mike Atherton, further evidence that he revels in the responsibility that comes with being England captain. Another substantial innings, 86, was the backbone of England's match-winning total. The ability of Devon Malcolm to unsettle the West Indian batsman is also crucial to England. Today he surprised Brian Lara with the new ball to provide the initial breakthrough. But it was the mercurial Chris Lewis who sparked the collapse. Atherton was his 3rd victim, leaving the West Indies on 55 for 5. Jimmy Adams kept his team in with a chance until he tried one big hit too many and was caught on the boundary for 29. Curtly Ambrose was the last man out, caught by Smith, another wicket for Malcolm, and exactly the start of the tour England had hoped for. Duncan Jones, BBC News.
And tonight's main news again, British Steel has been fined more than £24 million by the European Commission for price fixing. There are fears the company may have to cut jobs as a result. There's more on Newsnight on BBC2 at 10:30, but from the 9 o'clock news, good night.
Good evening. The government is being ordered to prohibit bathing on the northwest's dirty beaches. Almost all the region's resorts, including Blackpool, Southport and Morecambe, fail the strict environmental standards laid down by the European Commission. The latest toughening of the rules could prove a commercial disaster for the towns involved.
Until today, it had been thought that the Commission would probably allow more flexibility in bringing the region's beaches up to standard by 1995. Instead, it's done the reverse. The European Environment Commissioner appears to have lost patience with states which are still dragging their feet on efforts to clean up their beaches. He's now revised the Bathing Water Directive and has told member states they must prohibit bathing on beaches that fail to meet European standards. This will now go before the Council of Ministers in the spring for confirmation and could be enforced next year. They would be saying, in effect, that virtually all the region's beaches would be out of bounds because the Commission considers they're a public health risk.
Police and trading standards officers investigating the discovery of nearly £1 million worth of fake perfume say the find could be linked to a terrorist group. More than 700 boxes of counterfeit scent, labelled with well-known brand names, were found at a warehouse in Denton in Greater Manchester. It's thought the money raised by the sale of the fakes could have been used to buy drugs or to finance terrorist activities. Football, and Tranmere Rovers have beaten Aston Villa by 3-1 in their Coca-Cola Cup semi-final first leg. The Tranmere goals were scored by Nolan, Hughes and Aldridge. But in Rugby League, Wigan have lost to Wakefield Trinity. They were beaten by 20 points to 13 at Central Park. More action in sport tonight at 10:20 on BBC1. We'll be back with the region's news at 6:25 in the morning. But for now, from us all here, a very good night to you.
On BBC2 shortly, the Lydgates face possible bankruptcy in the final episode of George Eliot's Middlemarch.
Hello, it's got incredibly cold already in Scotland. It's about -10. It could even drop a degree below that in the Dundee area, Tayside and Fife. It'll not get quite as cold as you move into northern England and Northern Ireland, but nevertheless, a pretty stiff frost there. Rather lighter frost further south. But for much of England, Wales, I think we'll see temperatures just above zero, and that's a result of earlier cloud, although a lot of it's fallen away. There's an obvious link here, though, still from northeast England back in towards Ireland, that old frontal system. Well, you could just get the odd spot of sleet still from that over Lincolnshire overnight, but the main problem for much of England and Wales is going to be fog. It's already pretty thick, certainly in the home counties to the west of London. It's going to thicken up in many places, but more especially, I think, in central and southern England, with ice being the major problem further north for northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland. Here's a few images of that rain, or snow as it was falling earlier on in the North York moors. It's pushed down to Humberside now into North Lincolnshire, and on the whole it's falling as sleet or rain and tending to die out. But there's a definite link back through Ireland, and that'll carry on moving up towards Northern Ireland for tomorrow morning. But we start the morning with the southeast quadrant, which again is going to be dull. 3 to 5 degrees we'll probably get at best, but I think it'll take a time to clear the mist and the fog, and there may not be any brightness at all. We won't rule it out completely. It's more likely to be bright, though, as it was today in Cornwall and Devon. In much of Wales, and a different day in Northern Ireland, bright is certainly in Northern England, far more likely. Scotland, a similar day, but the cloud will thicken as the day goes on. Now, I thought initially Northern Ireland could have a good day, but it might well start rather drizzly as a result of that rain moving up. Brighter in the middle, and then cloudier by the end of the day, and 5 degrees. Now, the wind is not going to be very great, and therefore air quality poor at the moment will probably stay poor over much of southern Scotland, northern and central England during tomorrow. That's tomorrow's chart. Isobars not tight, little wind. Tighter on Friday, and the front tries to push a little bit further in. So rain, possibly even some snow in the west, a few wintry showers in the east, but for many of us, just a bright and fine day. Good night.
Some like it hot. Some like it hot.
Here's a man of the world. A man whose new show starts Sunday, and boy, is it hot stuff. He'll be scouring the earth to serve up television tasties. He'll be luring top international stars, by satellite, of course. And he'll be discussing the weightiest world affairs with the sharpest tongues around. Sunday Night Clive, World Life on One.
Some like it hot, some like it hot.
Fresh from their 11th hour victory over the Scots, England moved to home soil to tackle the Irish, still hungry for their first win. BBC Sport covers the action live from Twickenham, plus highlights of the clash between Wales and France in Grandstand, Saturday 12:15 on BBC1.
A major new series narrated by Bob Hoskins begins now on BBC1 as some of the most notorious villains of the last 50 years reveal the chilling reality of the underworld.